This is Technically Legal, a podcast about legal technology, innovation in the legal industry, and the impact tech is having on the law. I'm Chad Main, the founder of legal services company Percipient, and on today's show, I'm talking to legal AI researcher Anna Guo about Legalbenchmarks.ai. That's a group that puts AI to the test to see if it really lives up to the hype when it's used for legal use cases. My guest today is Anna Guo. She's a lawyer that started in big law, but then left the practice to build and sell a B2B marketplace that commercial giants like Google and Microsoft use to access team building solutions. Now she's focusing her energies on testing AI for use in the legal industry. When AI tools like Harvey and Spellbook started popping up in legal, not to mention general purpose powerhouses like Google's Gemini and OpenAI's ChatGPT started popping up, and his colleagues started coming to her to get the scoop on these tools to figure out were they really any good and when they work in legal. At the time, the information she was giving in return was based on her experience with them, and it was somewhat anecdotal. So that gave her an idea. Why not really test the tools to see if they really did what they said they were going to do? That gave way to the creation of Legalbenchmarks.ai. As the organization's website explains it, its mission is to bring clarity to a space full of noise. To meet that stated goal, Anna's group is trying to figure out whether the promise of humans plus AI is truly better than humans alone or AI alone. Through their studies, they want to figure out what skills human lawyers have that still dominate, but where does AI consistently outperform lawyers? How she describes it is measuring the amount of delta, which is the distance of what humans can currently do compared to how much AI can elevate what humans can do. In their studies, Legalbenchmarks.ai tests both general use AI like ChatGPT and Gemini against AI specifically created for the legal industry. They looked at two use cases to date. The first was how good AI worked to compile information from legal sources. And in the second most recent test, they took a look at how well AI reviewed and redlined contracts. What the studies have found out might surprise you. Specifically, what they figured out is AI tools may be more accurate, but AI built for legal might be qualitatively better.
I started in big law in New York and then went to Singapore. Then I left to build my own business, which is completely not related to law. And I did that for 2.5 years, sold that business, and decided to go in-house.
What was the business? What type of business was it?
So it was a B2B marketplace for enterprise team building solutions, and very, very different from legal tech. So it's like an Airbnb experiences platform, but for B2B enterprise. And we had really big clients. We had like Google, Microsoft, Deloitte, all as our clients, and especially during COVID when the teams couldn't meet in person. They had to connect somehow outside of the work context. And we provided solutions and events for those teams. That was back in 2022. I went in-house and I worked at a payments company. So I worked at Alipay, which is China's biggest fintech. A lot of people don't know about it, but it's like the PayPal for China.
Okay.
I did that, and then I did a stint at Google. And it was actually when I was at Ant at Alipay that I realized I started seeing the impact of AI, the potential of its impact on AI. And because I've always been in the entrepreneurial circle, and all of my friends after I built and like I was building my business and I was like a digital nomad traveling all around the world. I came back, so people know that about my background, and they said, Anna, can you tell us what's going on with Harvey, with Robin AI, with all of these big legal tech companies that all of a sudden started popping up, and then they started coming to Singapore and pitching and hosting all of these events to try and get clients. And so, I got arrowed to do that research, and that's what started this whole benchmarking project, which is trying to provide information to the legal community about what is of value and what are the benefits of these AI tools for the profession.
At what point do you say, hey, I'm going to create Legalbenchmarks.ai and actually make this a thing versus me just anecdotally telling my friends and my colleagues about what I know and understand about the products out there?
I think that's definitely how it started, with just me trying out these tools. At that time, some of these tools were not gated. So in a way, you can sign up for a free trial just as a user. I don't think that's the case for a lot of these tools anymore. So it started like that. And then one day I was at an event where we were just discussing because like it's all of us lawyers and we all had access to our own AI tools. Some of them had internal on-prem built tools. Others had access to Harvey or, and some others had just like Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever. We're like, why don't we give it the same question and see and compare the outputs from all of these tools? And everybody had a blast doing that, but it was still like just vibe checking it. It's like, oh, it's based on vibes. You look at the answers and you're like, oh, which one do you like better? It wasn't systematic. So I just made a post. I think I posted on LinkedIn back in December of last year saying, hey, I'm evaluating these tools. Anyone interested? And that post, I mean, for the size of audience I had at that time, it just blew up. So I knew that there was a very strong interest in the community to have more of a systematic approach to evaluating these tools. And that's what kickstarted this project.
That's cool. And so you've done two studies today, right? One is on information extraction, the other one's contract analysis. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of those, I want you to explain something here. You say, I listened to their podcast you were on, and I really like this, what you said here. You said another way to frame what you're measuring is the amount of delta, which is the distance between what humans can currently do compared to how much AI can elevate a human to do, and what that distance is. Explain that, how and why you're measuring that.
I think there's two camps of people. There is like the whole world is going to collapse and then AI is definitely going to take over all our jobs camp. And then there's another camp of people who are very confident that humans will be always superior and AI will only ever complement human expertise. And so the goal there, I mean, in the first study, actually, we didn't have a human baseline. And initially, I didn't even think it was necessary to compare humans to AI. But I started to realize that you need to have some data, even if it's imperfect. Of course, like how can you represent human capability with just a small group of lawyers? But still, to take that first step to see what is the delta or like what is the difference between AI performance and human performance, and also to measure that on an ongoing basis to see how that progresses as time moves forward and as all of these technology improves. So I think that's the goal that I wanted.
At a high level, explain how the testing works. I know you test, well, initially for info extraction, you tested two things, accuracy and helpfulness. And then for contracts, you added a third test.
Platform workflow support, yeah.
Right. So explain just the process, explain who's involved, how you chose the tools, where you get the information, and how the sausage is made.
So I think the methodology of the second report, a lot of it was informed by the feedback and also by referencing what other people were doing in the industry, other leaders, like the VOW study, obviously. They're going to publish their second study, by the way, soon. I'm very looking forward to that. But looking at them and then also the feedback that we got from the first report and building on top of it. But basically, what I've noticed initially when I was doing evals is that a lot of the comparison of AI tools in general only focused on accuracy and accuracy of the text output. And that didn't feel like it was a complete picture of representation in terms of the performance or the utility that it brought to users. And so to try then to find categorically the different ways of capturing the full utility is actually very challenging and it's imperfect. I don't think that, any like the methodology we took necessarily is like A plus, but it was our attempt to try to capture the full utility of these tools for users. And accuracy is definitely one bucket of that. So that falls under one round of assessment, which is under reliability, which is does the output from the tool, first of all, is it relevant to the query? Is it factually accurate and is it legally adequate? So that fell under the more objective assessment. And then the second bucket is under usability assessment. That's still looking at the output layer because even let's say, because like based on our interviews and just my conversations with lawyers, initially my thought was that lawyers cared the most about accuracy. I don't know if that is your hunch as well or your observation from your conversation with lawyers, but initially I thought that was.
That's an interesting question because my gut was about to say yes, but then I go back to a conversation I just had with my buddy who's an in-house lawyer at a big construction company. And he was talking about they were looking at some AI tools. And one of his colleagues said, why do we need it? basically what he said is, why do we need it? It's not doing 100% of the whole task. So that goes to your qualitative, the usefulness, the helpfulness. So I don't know, but I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, so I also was open-minded. So like when I was speaking to lawyers, I paid attention to what they described as things they cared about. And a lot of them, even, like, when I talk to the best lawyers or, like, just, like, really you would think, like, the top lawyers practicing at Kirkland or, at, like, a really big law firm or people who are very senior and have been working for 20, 30 years in the field. I was like, "So, do you think then that a tool that isn't 100% accurate is okay?" And they're like, "It's perfectly fine." And I was shocked. I was like, "Why is that okay for you?" It's because for a lot of these lawyers, they're not using the tool necessarily to give an accurate answer. They're using it for brainstorming. They're using it to challenge their thinking or to complement their judgment. So, in that aspect, accuracy is not as important. It's more so like, does it help me develop better judgment? Is it presented in a way that is very clear and coherent, etc.? So we try to capsulate those buckets under the more qualitative metrics that lawyers care about based on what we heard were the most common feedback of what lawyers cared about qualitatively. And then the third round of assessment, we looked at the platform workflows, like the platform support. And this is born out of the feedback that we got from the community that it's not just the output that matters or that helps with the lawyer's work. It's also all of the other features and functions that these tools bring. For example, being completely integrated into Microsoft Word. So you don't always have to go to ChatGPT or, a different app to get your answers. Or the fact that you can do citation checks right in the output so you can verify easily where the source is coming from. Like all of those features and functions that's not part of just the text output is important. So we wanted to assess that as well. So I think those three components form the way we evaluated these tools.
Going back to the qualitative example you gave there, where the question was, hey, are you worried about complete 100% accuracy? And the answer was, no, just get us there, help us brainstorm. And I started thinking, you know, at some level, do we try to subject AI to a higher level of scrutiny than an associate, a human associate? Because you wouldn't expect 100% accuracy from an associate that's learning a new area of law. So I guess it's kind of how they're looking at it, right?
And I think there is a fallacy there. I mean, I don't know if this is the right thing to say, but a lot of people always compare AI to a junior associate. But the fact is, like, and of course, like our sample is not representative, but we had human lawyers as a baseline, and a lot of them were not junior lawyers. There were lawyers, some of them with more than 10 years of work experience, and yet they still underperformed and made mistakes that the AIs didn't make. Some of the AIs didn't make. So I think it's probably just like humans. As humans, like we make mistakes. It's not just, because this is a young professional or this person is inexperienced that they made a mistake.
With that, let's talk about the actual results of this study, which is pretty interesting. We should point out that you tested some legal specific AI platforms and then some, ChatGPT, Google Gemini, et cetera. And there's some pretty interesting findings you have is I think for both studies, both the information extraction and the contract, I think at a high level, the finding was the general LLMs, the ChatGPTs, the Googles were more accurate, but qualitatively in the end, the more legal facing ones got the higher marks. Is that correct analysis?
I think the first part I would agree that the highest performing tools ended up being the general purpose AI assistants, but specifically just a few. It's not like all, if you're a general AI assistant, that you are all performed higher than legal AI assistant. And I mean, there's so many caveats to the study, right?
Right,
Like we
right.
also didn't test all of the tools that's available in the world to reach that conclusion. But out of the tools that we tested, yes, that was the case. And then from a qualitative angle, I would say that yes, in the first study, the legal specific tools provided more useful outputs. In the second study, however, if I remember correctly, I think Gemini 2.5 Pro also provided very useful outputs, although it wasn't the top performing tool. But still, it was ranked very highly overall, and it was also ranked the highest, I believe, for one of the sub dimensions, whether it was like I think helpfulness or some other kind of dimension. So I would say it's pretty close as well.
But I guess that makes sense, right? Because legal AI tools are made for the way lawyers work, right? So that makes total sense. But maybe you don't, or maybe do or do not know the legal specific AI tools. you tested, did they have their own models or did they sit on top of some of the bigger guys?
They definitely use models from the different base model providers.
We need to do more with less. That is the key takeaway nowadays from almost every survey of in-house counsel. But what if it didn't have to be that way? What if you actually could do more for less? By combining legal expertise and technology, Percipient enables legal teams to get more work done for less. Buried in contracts and sales is frustrated with turnaround time? We can help with that. Did you just get hit with a subpoena and reviewing 100,000 documents and files will tax your resources or cost you a small fortune in billable hours? We can help there too. Our team of legal professionals leverage tech and project management principles with the right amount of human oversight to deliver precise, efficient, and cost-effective legal solutions. Whether it's legal operations and contract management support, subpoena compliance, or document review, Percipient is your partner in really doing more for less. Percipient. Legal services powered by technology.
So here's some interesting stats. This is specifically about the second study on contract. You said AI tools matched and in some cases outperformed lawyers in producing reliable first drafts. Humans were reliable in 56.7 of the tasks, but several AI solutions met or exceeded this baseline. I thought that was pretty interesting, but the caveat is AI did not exceed it by leaps and bounds, right? They were all pretty close, but AI still won.
Yes, correct.
Did that surprise you?
Yeah, so was that the most surprising finding for you or where?
No, actually, no, it wasn't. It wasn't that I wasn't surprised. The finding that I thought was most interesting is one of the, you talk about the myths. Humans working with AI will always outperform AI alone. At least in the sample set you used in that second analysis, you said that was false. Why is that? Where did that determination come from?
This is very interesting because initially I did make a LinkedIn post where I wanted to test whether humans working with AI will definitely outperform humans or AI alone. And in the end, our data only supported this belief. So that's why that this belief three made it. But then the my LinkedIn post, the other hypothesis assumptions didn't make it. And I think what this is coming from is that I did a poll a few weeks back where I asked the community whether they thought that humans equipped with AI tools will be able to outperform like humans alone or AI alone. And it was like 95% of people thought that humans plus AI will always come out on top. And the results were obviously not the case. So, how it was structured, the study, was that the lawyers who completed the tasks, they could choose to use whatever tools that they had access to, or they could choose not to use any tools. So, this is kind of simulating what it is really like in a working environment. So like a lawyer can choose whatever they had access to, or they could choose, to just use their brains and do the work. And we extracted all of the tasks that were completed by the humans where they labeled that they completed this task with AI. And we looked at the performance of those task outputs under the same criteria as all of the other outputs by AI and compared it against AI outputs. And the results was that, yes, human plus AI tasks did have a higher reliability rate compared to the ones that humans did alone without any AI assistance. So yes, the AI assistance did provide a increase in the output's reliability. However, even in that case, it wasn't able to outperform the top AI tool. So in our case, it's Gemini 2.5 Pro, for example, still had an overall higher accuracy rate than the human plus AI combo. So that is what led to this conclusion.
There's a related conclusion too. You mentioned in the report, legal AI tools surface material risks that lawyers missed entirely. And I think if I recall reading it, like lawyers made a stop, like, oh, they got most of it. They're 75, 80% of the way there, but they didn't finish like the last piece and they might have missed some stuff.
So I think that conclusion is coming from, if I recall correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, that in high risk scenarios, some of the this is where legal AI tools outperform, I think, the general purpose tools and also humans in the case that they flagged the compliance or the unenforceability issues in these high risk scenarios, whereas humans flagged none. they didn't flag any of these issues. And general purpose AI tools, some of them did, but at a lower rate than legal AI tools. So what this means is that when there is a request to draft, let's say, a clause that is potentially illegal, when the humans were given that task, the legal AI tools were given that task, and general purpose AI tools were given that task, in our sample size of the data, the legal AI tools were more likely to say, hey, you should consider that this could be potentially in violation of the law. So it flagged that risk to the user in the output. Whereas the human lawyer responses, they just drafted whatever was instructed. And in none of the outputs submitted by the humans, there was any kind of risk analysis. I think that is another way to frame the results.
That makes total sense because maybe the human didn't know about the risk or whatever. Maybe this wasn't, that's interesting. It's similarly, this isn't surprising either. I think it was in the first report, you guys figured out that AI was much more consistent and doing the same thing over and over, use the same language versus humans where they're getting there. It's the same thing that they're saying, but they might be using different language.
So I actually want to do some follow-up study on this because a lot of people actually find this very surprising as well. Also, what people found the most surprising based on some of the conversations I had was the fact that legal AI tools did not outperform general purpose AI tools in terms of accuracy and reliability. I think that part is confusing for a lot of lawyers. So I definitely need to double click on what could be potentially the reason why. And I know we talked a little bit about that. But coming back to this point, I think one of the potential explanations is you and I, we can be experts in a very certain niche and we'll be really good. Let's say, someone at construction and I'm at payments. But then when you're quizzed on a very broad area of the law, I'm not going to be an expert at arbitration or at another legal practice. Whereas these AI tools are trained on such vast quantities of data that they're able to be more of an expert in those fields that we're not an expert in than we are ourselves.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. That's one of my hypotheses.
That makes total sense. And then I mentioned it a minute ago, but in the report, you have this AI versus human SWOT analysis. So in a nutshell, what do you think humans prove better at? And what do you think AI proved better at? Which would you use the two for after going through these studies?
I think I would definitely use AI tools for brainstorming. That was one of the things that comes up again and again with conversations with different lawyers. I remember even one legal counsel saying that if you refuse to use a tool just because it's not 100% correct, you're not using it the right way. Because she was using it for brainstorming and pushing back on her own ideas to kind of test her own bias. And I think I use that all the time for myself as well, because you're bound to have any human, regardless of whether you're a junior or you're a senior lawyer, you're going to have biases and you're going to have blind spots. So I would definitely use AI and I would tool stack. I would definitely not just rely on one AI tool. I would use multiple AI tools to help me expand my brain and expand my view. So definitely I would use it for that. And for more routine tasks, I know there's a lot of legal tech tools that offer these vault solutions where you can mass review contracts, let's say for very simple, straightforward terms like, I don't know, governing law or term of the contract, stuff like that. There's just no way humans can compete. It's not even on the same scale. They can do it in a minute. Whereas if you have a human go through 100 contracts, it will definitely take hours, if not days. So for standard routine tasks at mass scale, definitely use AI. I would use AI for brainstorming. But for humans, I think what humans really excel at is we're able to ingest a lot more context and we're able to make more commercially reasonable decisions that AI just don't seem to have that common sense. It can go either extreme. So in one of the tasks where we had a task that asks to draft a favorable term for one party, what the AIs would do sometimes is they would draft in according to this instruction, but in a way that is commercially just unacceptable. No party would accept those terms on that basis, even though it was favorable to the party as instructed. Whereas in those scenarios, I think humans would have a lot more of that just common sense to say, okay, what is a reasonable ask and what isn't. So for those scenarios, I think humans still have a significant edge.
Yeah. So what's on the roadmap? You got 2 studies under your belt, Legal Benchmarks AI. What's the next thing you guys are focusing on?
I think definitely I need so every time I publish a study, I'm speaking to people in the community to hear their feedback, what's valuable for them, what they think are the gaps, to improve on the quality and also to help further define and refine the methodology. Because frankly speaking, evals, also the benchmarking of AI solutions is still in its nascent stage. So that's why if you look at different studies, you'll see that they have maybe overlapping some methodology, but very like different methodology. May have very different definitions for even what accuracy means. And so I think we're in the stage where we're still exploring. So I would definitely like to refine the methodology based on the feedback from the community, broaden the scope. Obviously, we've done info extraction, we've done contract drafting now as a second report. So broaden it so it can cover more tasks and also more jurisdictions, more regions, and also more languages. That's one feedback we've gotten. Okay, so it does
Right.
well in English. How does it do in Spanish?
That'd be very interesting. That'd be very interesting. Anna, speaking of the community reaching out to you, if people want to learn more about Legal Benchmarks AI, give you input, give you ideas, where do you want to send them?
They can definitely go to the website. I made it very easy this time with the naming Legalbenchmarks.ai. They can join the community there. Obviously, hopefully, you'll include a link
Yes,
there
absolutely will do.
for them to go. And then I sporadically share my thoughts on LinkedIn so they can also follow me or like just check out my page under Anna Guo.
GUO.
Yes, GUO. If they're interested in what I think about certain legal tech developments, I usually post it there. But yeah, that's it.
Appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. This is fascinating. I can't wait to see the next findings you guys have.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chad, and for sharing your thoughts as well.
Okay, that's a wrap for today's episode. As always, we really appreciate you listening. If you want to subscribe, you can find us on most major podcast platforms like Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, etc. Also, if you like us enough, I hope you leave us a favorable review. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, this has been Technically Legal.